Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cute Fluffy Plushie panel. We have 3 marquee plushie makers from Australia here today to discuss with you how to make, how to care, and everything plushie related. So going down the list, right here is Nazegoreng.
Hello, my name's Nazegoreng. I'm from Queensland, so this is a local con for me, but I've been plush making for about 2 years now, so yeah.
Then moving down the line, we have Snuggle Factory.
Hi. Oh, hello, I'm Snuggle Factory. I've been doing this probably just over a year now. This is my second pony convention, so yeah, what else do I say? I'm not local, I'm from Newcastle.
And then down at the end is Shinta or Scarlet.
Hello. I'm Chinta. I also go by Scarlet, and if any of you are off BAU, I'm Frecklefire. Fox Pony. I'm from Melbourne, and I've been plushing for the last year or so. I think it's a year. I'm pretty sure it's a year.
Okay, so I mean, so just to get right into it, plushie making as a whole is sort of a very niche thing and obscure thing to get into, so I think we would like to know what brought you into the plushie making process, what inspired you to get started, and if we could just answer down the line, that'd be awesome.
Pretty much I saw the plushes that everyone else was making and I thought, well, I can't afford as many as I would like, which was a lot. So I pretty much taught myself how to do it, which is what a lot of people did, and that has turned into my full-time business. So I graduated university and have been doing it ever since, so yeah.
Yeah, pretty much the same. Went to the first convention in Sydney and realised that there wasn't a lot of plush artists and that they were quite expensive, so I thought I could try them myself. I learned very quickly that it was very hard, but yeah, I had a massive appreciation for plush artists after that. So,
Okay. Basically, I had a choice last year when I was making my Gala Applejack costume. I could either pay $200 for like 20 embroidered apples, or I could buy myself an embroidery machine and then be able to make plushies. So I chose the second option. And then I could do it for costume too, so a lot of my stuff ends up being embroidered regardless. And it's fun presents. You can make towels, it's amazing.
So I guess a little bit carry on then, like, was there any one plushie in particular that you saw, like, it was like, I want that plushie, but I can't, like, what was it? Which character was it?
Nazes.
I can't remember what character, but I remember it was Space Voyager, who's, I think she's Canadian or American. Kind of. But yeah, I saw her plushes and I thought those were just amazing. So yeah, she inspired me.
I remember at the first convention in Sydney there was this Luna plushie in the auction, and it was way out of my price range, and I was like, it's so nice. But yeah, that was what did it for me.
I really like plushing OCs. It was mainly because my friend was going through a little bit of a rough patch, and I wanted to make him happy, so I hand embroidered the eyes of his OC and his cutie mark, and then I made him a plushie, and then I made me a plushie, and then it just didn't stop.
Okay, so carrying on, you've now all decided, I'm going to make a plushie because these are awesome and they're adorable. How do you make the patterns just to begin with? Like, because I'm assuming that's the start of the process.
It's probably the hardest part of the process too.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So how does one draw up the pattern to begin?
I went the hard way and I decided to go from scratch. So one of the easier ways is just like use a pre-made pattern, and like the smart way is to learn how to sew the plushie first. But I guess I took the long road and I taught myself. So I looked at other plushies that I owned and that other people had made and sort of just guessed. And then progressively made like changes and updated my pattern. And there's probably been like 60 changes up to like the plushes that I'm making now. So
Yeah.
Well, I went the other way. I started with a plush pattern. It's known as Valley Violet's pattern. So this little derpy here is my first ever derpy. She's a little bit, yeah, but she's pretty gorgeous. But I always kept her because she was my first. But over the past year, I've progressed to my current stage, so like Maud Pie here. And it's taken a lot of revisions, but it's been a learning curve.
I started with Valley Violet's base, but like when I figured out what I really wanted, because when you're creating a pattern, you really need to figure out what you want in a plush, before you actually start patterning. So I knew when I wanted to make my version of a My Little Pony, I wanted to have it imitate my art style. So I wanted like kind of bulgy, boopable noses and butts. I really wanted butts.
Yeah.
Which sounds bad. And I wanted a good front view, which I think a lot of artists are now focusing on now that they've updated their patterns a lot. So that's
It's
how I
really
did it.
competitive too, and you
Yeah.
find lots of styles will go through like the plush market. So one person will do a good butt, and then everyone will be like, oh, I
That
should probably
butt.
change that on mine, or I should change the front view because blah is doing really good front views or stuff like that.
Or you could attempt to do like Firefly Twinkle Toes' like crazy mains.
Yeah.
Because damn.
Yeah.
At what stage when you're cutting a pattern then, and it's not a good pattern, how far into it do you realize like, uh-oh, this butt is not a good butt?
Stuffing. Like
Yeah.
you do not know what a plush looks like until it's stuffed. At all.
And then it's like, oh no.
It's like, oh, that's sewing time. No.
And often it's better just to start again than to just try and rectify it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you'll never fix it.
You need to fix the pattern, not like the plush that you've made.
Yeah.
So, because otherwise, like every plush that you make after that with that same pattern will have the same problem. When I was making my pattern, like I've changed it about 4 times. I've had like 4 major revisions to mine. But I use Photoshop a lot, so I will overlay like show vectors onto my like pictures of my pattern revisions, so I can know, okay, this leg needs to be longer or this needs to be thinner or things like that.
I think also with that, when you're like making your revisions, sewing order is really important. So all your pieces like need to be sewn in a certain order, or else they won't look the same as if you do it otherwise, or it'll make it a million times more difficult to sew a section. Trust me, my butts.
So again, like with the sewing and there's stitching and stuffing, how many tools are you using and what tools exactly are you using to make one pony plushie?
There's the machinery, and then there's like all your bits and pieces. So usually you'll have a sewing machine and an embroidery machine, or one that does both, and then just dozens and dozens of scissors, needles, pliers,
Yeah.
tweezers.
Definitely pliers.
Definitely pliers. Because like when you're hand stitching, if it starts to get through that really thick piece and you're finding it impossible, pliers are your best friend ever. I think also like there's different types of fabric, and then you're also using things in embroidery, because all the embroidery needs its own special sort of stuff. Like you need at least 2 different kinds of stabilizers, and then like
All your threads.
all your
Yeah.
threads.
I probably
oh my
have
God.
like 400 different colours of thread, and even then I'll still come up to characters and I'll be like, I don't have that colour.
And
There's
like-
just that many.
Because like one of the things I do when I can't find a thread I've got in that color is I actually like take my Copic markers and I like do an overlay shade, and it suddenly it's the right shade again, and you're like, thank God.
So with all these like different sources of fabric then, because it sounds pretty hard to get that exact one, where are you going to get the sources? Like where are you sourcing all of this?
I source all mine from overseas because
Yeah.
I have so many commissions of so many different characters. The Australian suppliers just aren't varied enough, and they don't have like all the colours. So
Or the quality.
yeah, all the quality. So I order my stuff from the UK, which is expensive for shipping, but then you have like 80 colours to choose from as opposed to 10 colours in Australia.
The Shannon Minky's gone up to like 100 colours now.
Yeah.
It's really good.
It's okay. So when we're discussing different types of minky, there's varying grades, and most of the time it's the density of like the fluff on the top
So
part.
how soft it is.
It's
I-
soft and it's like almost tougher. Like it feels stronger when
It
you're
just
working
feels
with it.
better quality. Like you
Yeah.
can feel if it's a flimsy piece of fabric.
Yeah.
I always say that not all Minky is created equal.
No.
So
No, it is not.
So if it's all being sourced overseas, like what's going on with the Australia sourcing of fabric? Like
I've heard people that have tried to get it in bulk, but the shipping is just ridiculous. Like bolts of fabric are pretty big.
Yeah.
And I think unless you had like a tanker or something to like bring over like
And
your
sea
own
shipping
yeah.
takes way too long.
Yeah.
but if Australia were to step up and like if
it'd be
the fabric was
amazing.
here,
Oh,
would
yeah.
it be
We'd be buying from Australia immediately.
It's
because
just
of the price.
ridiculous
Yeah.
that we have to buy from overseas, but you know.
This one's an idea for all of you. Get into the fabric making
Yeah.
business.
Also, like there is a website that specifies and it's better than the Lincraft or the Spotlight Minky. It's minky.com.au, and it's a fluffier Minky. And I don't really like. I'd probably use it only for my chibis because it doesn't stretch very well. But if you're wanting to start which is like kind of one of the key things you guys might be here for. If you're wanting to start, it's a good site to kind of source a couple of colors from and give Minky a go.
Because it's not cheap.
It's not cheap, but it's like, it's kind of that in-between grade.
So is that like minky.com, was it?
Minky, so it's like 2 E's, not a Y.
Okay, Mickey.
Yeah, Minky. Minky. Caw-caw.
And so that, when you look at a plushie as well, like obviously it's the fabric for the main coat body, but then with the cutie marks, is there cutie marks on both sides of this already? I can't tell. The point is the cutie marks are always seem to be made out of like a different material or fabric. How is that made? Because it seems so jarring to the rest of the plushie. Similar with the eyes as well.
Most of it's embroidery. I know some people that do sew fabric on, but 90% of the time people are embroidering them on, so it's all thread.
There's also applique. Like the applique ones, Firefly Twinkle Toast?
Yeah, she uses like sand and things like that.
But like some people combine techniques. So I think there's an artist called, she goes by Buttercup Baby, PNG, I think something. Anyway, she did a Sonata, like she was one of the first people to do a Sonata plush. And she did like a combination of applique and embroidery. So the heart shape, I'll just use mine. The heart shape here was like in like Minky, but the rest of it was embroidered. So it was a really nice kind of two-tone effect, which was really cool. I really wanted to be able to do that, but I have no idea how to machine applique.
Snuggle, did you have anything to add there? Or are you
Not
good?
really. See, I started with Spotlight Minky, and I find that it doesn't wear very well. Like as soon as it gets dirty, it's just it's matted. But yeah, there's lots of different sources of Minky. My mum bought this hideous. She bought some. She makes quilts, and she was going to put it on the back of it. And as soon as I touched it, I was like, I never want to touch it again.
You can really feel the difference if you have them next to each other. Like mine are all made of Shannon Minky, which is from the UK, and you can just feel it as just gorgeous. So there's a real difference. Yeah,
it's really soft.
I would never use this on, like I would never use a cheap quality Minky on a big plush. It doesn't work at all.
And when your commissioners are paying as much as they are, you want to give them a quality plush. So
it's also half the reason for your price being like big as well because of all that import cost.
And the Australian dollar isn't very good at the moment.
Why?
Like I like do commissions full time, and I can order fabric, and the shipping cost alone can be like $400. So it's pretty expensive.
Shop the sales.
And I guess too, like you're saying, you want to use high quality, especially on like the manes and tails, as you were saying, and I would imagine all the other limbs like wings and horns. And for a lot of people who may not know the process, that could be a big selling point because a tail that's not as like upright or manes that look droopy won't sell as well. How do you cut the manes and tails so that they look really good and are easy to...
A lot of it's what's on the inside.
Yeah.
So with my tails, because they're so heavy and I make all my plushes quite large, I have like wire, a heavy gauge wire that runs into the body and through the tails. And I tape it up so that you can't feel it from the outside, but it lets you sort of lift the tail and it'll stay rather than just drooping on the ground.
Cool.
And also with manes, like flat manes, and like little flat bits in their manes, I use quilt batting, so that's something they put inside quilts to sort of keep it rigid so it's not like floppy. It keeps its shape.
Different things I use. Sometimes I use stabilizers. So there's usually you use cutaway. I use tearaway stabilizers for my embroidery, but I ended up buying this packet that had like this cutaway stabilizer in it, and I don't use it for anything. But now I've started using it because if you want manes to look like and stay where they are and they're just a flat piece, I find it's really good to put it in those. But otherwise, it's just stuffing for me. Yeah.
I'm very lucky to have had a mother who has sewn her entire life and made most of my clothes when I was a kid. So I had access to a lot of materials when I first started, including quilt batting, because I do that when I try to do flat things. But it also really depends because sometimes when you're stuffing a mane and a tail, you kind of need to combine techniques. So they might have like a really bulky end to their mane, but the top part's really flat. So you'd put a little bit of batting down, but you'd also stuff just the edges.
Like Rarity's tail here, this main bit here is stuffed and then the rest is quilt batting because it's flat.
Yeah.
With that though, then what would be harder to stuff and design, like a tail or wings? Because it always, to me, I would think the wings are the toughest because they're obscure shapes and all that, but it sounds like the tails have to be really specific as well.
It really depends. Depends on the tail.
It also depends on the wings, because
wings.
I believe there's a certain man in the audience that made me do a steampunk wing. I'm looking at you. Yeah, you know it. But the mech wing that I did, because I only started doing big Pegasus wings recently because I don't get any commissions for them. But I do 3D wings, so it's 2 sections. So you see how Snuggle's got embroidery there. I'd use a new piece of, like an entirely new separate piece of fabric that's been stuffed. But like that's because it's my preference. But in that one I'd use, like when I was doing the mechanical part of the wing, yeah, I'm still looking at you, man. I ended up doing like almost an overlay cuff thing that had to fold over, and then you had to stitch the entire thing down over all of that. And like that was difficult, but like the physical stuffing of it, you poor thing, you look so tired. The physical stuffing of it's not difficult. It's just getting everything to stay in place while you're stuffing, because everything will move around because the stuffing will push things.
And the bigger the pony, it's harder to do like with big wings. Like neither of those Alicons have big wings because they're mine, and I couldn't be bothered to make big wings for them. But I made a Celestia plushie once, and she was like nearly 30 inches tall. She was huge, and her wings are massive, so it was like such a challenge to get each individual feather to stay up. So she had like multiple layers of hard plastic inside the wing, and then like multiple gauge wire going like full skeleton through her body to hold the wings up because they were so heavy. And
Okay. And then I guess continuing on from that, though, is stuffing in general. Like, how much will stuffing cost? How long is the stuffing process? Are you able to redo the stuffing if something goes wrong? Can you walk us through that?
Just a quick note. Naz made a beautiful post once on her Tumblr about how she was trying to buy like more than 10 100 kilo bags or something of like stuffing from this one manufacturer. Yeah. You need a lot to stuff a plush. Like a lot.
I buy mine in like 10 kilo boxes, which is like a box big enough for you to fit in. So
you could always pack your plush.
Yeah, people are like, oh, it only needs like this much.
You'd probably need like a mound like about that for one of these.
Like how much a normal person would think would fit into like maybe 10 ponies goes into one.
Yeah.
It's really condensed.
Yeah. Also, you kind of need to, when you're working with it, you need to like almost tease it apart. So when you're working with it, you got to do it in small batches just to make sure you've got the shapes right.
Yeah, otherwise it balls up and it looks terrible.
And like it clumps and
And over time, like with frequent handling, like stuffing can like wear out of shape. So you can like unstuff a pony. Like I unstuffed Cadence and put some new wire in her legs for the convention because she'd been handled a bit too much. So you can do that. Yeah.
So like when you're sitting on all these mounds of stuffing, though, do you have to like push it aside, like can't touch until you're using it, or can you like sleep on it in that? Because if you have 10 kilos of stuffing, it'd be pretty tempting to just like,
Sometimes when you're getting ready for some conventions, it would be very nice just to curl up in it. But it's synthetic as well, so it'll get really hot if you sit in it too long.
Yeah. I like to imagine that I'm sitting in a cloud when I'm working with it, just because there's so much, and it's everywhere, and okay, you ever start plushing? Plush on a surface like vinyl flooring. Do not plush on carpet. You will never, without a vacuum cleaner, you will never get that stuff out. You could try to broom it, you could try to sweep it, ain't gonna work. But yeah, it's a lot of fluff.
Yeah. Even with a vinyl floor, though, I have so much of that minky stuff in my computer chair.
Yeah.
It just gets in the rollers.
It just gets in everything.
It
like your clothes will forever be covered in like little traces.
I wear an apron when I plush, and like I have specific clothes that I'll wear when I'm plushing, which sounds really weird, but I wear my leggings, like my dragon leggings, because it's shiny and synthetic-y stuff, so it doesn't stick. It's amazing.
I wear my black milk. Yeah,
black milk.
Oh, yes.
It's almost like the equivalent to cat hair.
Pretty much, yeah. Except, like, some people aren't allergic to it, which is good. Yeah.
Okay, next question involves the stitching of the plushie. How much of that is done by machine? Which parts are done by hand? What's the ratio? Are they all done by hand? Are you that insane, or...?
Some people are.
Some people are beautiful, but they're dumb.
Yeah.
Yes. No,
I mean, I know a lot of people when they very first start out will hand sew because it is a big investment to buy a sewing machine, but you can get a cheap one, like even second hand, just to start you off with. With mine, all the head and the body and most of the mains and tails are all machine sewn, and then the only hand sewing is attaching like things to each other, so the head to the neck, the ears to the head, the horn to the head, like the mane and tail to the body. So
yeah, mine are pretty much the same. You sort of machine sew everything. So all the body, you turn it inside out, stuff it, the heads. Like you sew the ears and then you have to attach the ears to the heads and manes to everything. Yeah.
Yeah, basically what everyone else has said. Yeah. I can't add to that.
But yeah, you get really sore fingers. Like hand sewing takes a long time.
Wear a wrist brace if you can. I actually, when I first started, I had a period earlier this year where my wrist absolutely just caned after working too hard on plush, and then it turned out that like I developed RSI. Woo! So I had to take a break, and then, but like the advice from my doctor is wear a wrist brace. And like if you're working with like if you can learn how to work with a thimble when you're plushing, because I may or may not have like several indents. I'm basically a guitarist at this point. My fingers are so thick.
Yeah. That's why. Yeah.
Another thing you can do, because I hate working with thimbles and I get really sore fingers, and sometimes like you get bleeding fingers, which is not good when you're working with lots of plushes. So I found that using like sports tape on your fingers is a good alternative. So it's thick enough that you like won't pierce your skin, but it's thin enough that you still have like the maneuverability with your fingers.
You also got to be careful with that because you do sweat when you plush, and you have to periodically wash your hands when you're plushing, especially if you're working in white, because you don't want to get the minky icky. Because the moment it starts to feel any sort of matty, it doesn't come back. No, there's no way to fix it.
Yeah, I have an air conditioner in my sewing room. It gets used a lot.
I am jealous. I plush in the kitchen.
Just throwing it out there for like those who are here this morning. See, I wasn't joking when I said there's blood and sweat and tears going into the making of these things.
I mean, we try not to, but it does happen.
I'm not saying it's in it itself, but it's plushie making's hardcore.
Yeah.
It's very hardcore. Which brings me to my next point would be pricing these. Because of the amount of work that goes into it, I'm sure a lot of people who don't realize it would look at a price and go like, whoa, that's kind of crazy.
Darn you, mass marketing.
Yeah, like what is your thought process then behind the pricing? Because it's a lot of work. How much does that influence your pricing, and how much does the market influence the pricing for a plushie?
Ooh, market.
I charge very high for my plushes.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realise that a lot of it's because of the Australian dollar and how much it costs to buy everything.
Yeah.
People in the States get off easy because they can just drive down to the local store and buy Minky about half the cost of what it costs us. So it's a lot more expensive to buy all the like equipment, and it probably costs about 3 times as much to get a sewing machine over here as it does over there, just due to like the American dollar.
With that being said, my first embroidery sewing machine, which is now busted, which was the most hellish experience of my life. My first embroidery machine was American. I had it imported. I had like a step-down converter. So if you are wanting to get started, it's a good start, but I don't recommend it because apparently no Australian sewing machine repair guy can fix them. But my first machine was an SE400, which is the equivalent to the Australian Innovus 500D, I think. Anyway, in America, kid you not, you can get it for $285 US. In Australia, the Innovus 500D is about $1,200.
Yes.
And that's like a starting machine.
Yeah, that's not even a high-grade embroidery machine. That's like your basic, why do you do this to me?
It's incredibly ridiculous.
And you can't just order it online from the States and have it shipped down here?
Well, I did, and like altogether the entire package, including like FedEx shipping, was $400. And this was then the Australian dollar was good, so keep that in mind. And it was a good start. Like, I learned a lot using that machine. But I also learned that using it as both a sewing machine and an embroidery machine at the rate I was working and how much work I had, it's probably what ended up killing it in the first place. So now I have 2 separate machines. I have the P770, which was like the cheapest one that a kid in a club, thank God they exist.
It was still like $1,000 though.
Yeah, they're still $1,000. The cheapest embroidery machine that you can get delivered, and then I also I can't even remember, it was the most decent quality, cheapest sewing machine I could get, but like at Spotlight, and there was a sale, so Yay. Sales.
Yeah. But yeah, you get like people that can get really aggressive when they hear your pricing. Like I've had people tell me like have like death threats and things like that.
You've gotten death threats.
Yeah, like obviously they're not serious, but I've had people send me very, very nasty messages.
When there's people come, I'm just like, well, you can find someone else.
I've yet to have that, probably because I like one of the things, and I know you. I'm not sure if Snuggle. Do you have terms and conditions?
Yeah, I do now.
I should.
It's really important to have terms and conditions
Yeah.
because you can get really nasty commissioners
Yeah.
on the rare occasion.
I did that, especially after seeing some people's attitude to like the way that the plush is treated, and sometimes they try to change the design halfway through, and
I
you're
hate
kind of like, well, no, we've agreed on this quote. This quote is for the initial plush. Like I can't just change the work I did because it's different now. You're stuck with it. I'm sorry, but yeah, my pricing. I think a lot of people think my pricing is expensive, but I was lucky enough to be working in a creative industry already. So like I work in jewelry, and like I know people who do custom jewelry, and people tell me I'm too cheap, even though like these like my big mares, they start at 280 AUD, but like that's mainly to cover material cost. And like I need to time myself when I make a plush next time. But like, yeah, they start at 280, but I know people if they could, and like if we priced like we should be doing, we'd all be pricing like Naz, because like she's the only one that I know is probably pricing right for the amount of work she's doing.
Yeah, so many hours go into these plushies. It's incredible.
How many hours do go into a plushie from start to finish?
Which plushie?
Well,
Like a standard mare.
yeah, standard mare.
With one color mane or like 10? Like, give me a character here.
All right.
Let's
who's
say
an easy-
more.
Applejack.
Okay.
Applejack without the hat.
Without the hat. Okay, Applejack's nice and
Yeah.
easy, but if you're doing satin stitching, so the detailing on her mane, you're kind of looking for the basic body at least 5 hours? No, like depending on how long and how big, because I know you've
It
got
depends.
3D ears,
Yeah.
so
It takes a while to draw out all the pattern, so that
Yeah.
takes a while. And then you got to cut it all out. And then you got to pin it all together.
And
then you got
embroidery.
to sew it.
It's
Like,
hard to say like how much
embroidery.
each thing takes, but it probably takes me about 2 days to make
Yeah.
a plush.
Yeah,
just like
definitely.
for a basic one.
yeah.
And even then, like, if you did one pony every 2 days, you get burnt out so quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that being
And
said-
that's probably like 12-hour days for me.
yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Is it like 2 days non-stop,
Yeah,
no sleep?
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty much.
Is that how you normally do it, or do you take the
No.
2 days of work over the span of a week?
I usually make a bunch at once, so I usually take 10 commissions at a time, and then I usually make 3 commissions like at the same time.
Yeah.
Out of that.
Coming up to conventions, it's a little bit like, so I must keep sewing. I have to keep sewing. But
I was still sewing at my table, like
I'm
in the first
still
hour.
sewing.
PonyCon. Yes, you are.
Yeah.
There's some sew action going on stage with this.
She
Do you
has
think-
no wings.
It's working
But
on it.
yeah, when conventions aren't happening though, I'm a university student, so I'll take 1 or 2 commissions, and I'll tell people that they have to give me a month because I have no idea what's going to come up.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Definitely.
Just on like pricing, I was really lucky because I went to uni for 3 years and studied animation, and we did a whole course on pricing and how not to let yourself get beaten down and undercharge for your work, which is really important because I see a lot of people out there undercharging, and they're really, I look at what they're charging for a single plush, and it's like that's what it cost me to make one out of materials. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, how much then do the plushies that have been starting to come out more in retail stores around here that have like been selling for like $20, $30, how much have those affected the market for custom plushies?
It hasn't really affected it very much.
really.
Because the people who want to buy a plush for $20 aren't going to buy a plush for $500, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and people who want quality aren't going to go buy a $20 plushie.
Yeah.
Also,
Vice versa.
like, that's for show characters. The
Yeah.
OC market is probably the biggest reason plush artists have so many things.
Definitely.
So, for example, and I'm showing off here a little bit, the Frickle Fire,
Best fox pony. Anyway, like, OCs are half of the... Actually, no, they're all the plushies I do. I've had only 1 or 2, like, character plushies. But I actually really love plushing OCs. They're always so different and unique. And, like, even though some OCs are hell... I'm still looking at you. Those are Doc Ock wings, man, on Techno Blue. I will. But like, even though some OCs are held, they're so worth it by the end of it because they're gorgeous.
And it's a lot more personal too.
Yeah, some of them are a nice challenge, but what I worry about with commissions is what if they receive it and they're like, I don't like it. Whereas if people buy things that are pre-made, you know that they already love it. That's my only issue.
I think that's why it's important to like, because one of the things about social media that's probably really handy for us is that people can see what stage you're up to. So I take photos like after embroidery is done, after basic construction is done, so where you can't see my pattern pieces, sneaky. And then like when everything's pinned down, and then the official photos come after everything's been plushed. People want to know what you're working on when you're working on a plushie and like how far you are along.
It becomes like a personal experience.
Yeah.
Like people connect to you and they follow what you're doing, and
You end up becoming really close friends sometimes with some of your commissioners. Like I know I've had that at least with a whole bunch of people. Like a lot of people end up being my friends. And some of them are already my friends. So I love you guys.
And sometimes it's good to bounce off people as well. So you're like, well, I could do it this way or I could do it this way. What's your input? And they might be like, well, what about this way? And you're like, oh, yeah. So
And sometimes, like, if they haven't given you a decent enough reference or a small, like, one-off pick, sometimes you end up helping them design the OC as well. Yeah, no, I'm still staring at you. That's what you get for coming in, Dr. Hooves.
So can I say, like, backseat plushie making then is almost encouraged? Like, if they're going to come and say, I want you to do it like this, like this, like this, and, like, with this style embroidery.
depends how far they take it.
yeah. If people are going to come in and be like, oh, you've done it that way, I don't like it that way, can you change it? It's like, no. But if you're still in process, it's kind of all right to sort of tweak things.
It's kind of like when digital artists live stream and they'll have the people watching them live stream and they'll be like, oh, what pose do you want? Like,
Yeah. I always try to, one of the things when I'm asking people what a commission, because I like to do different expressions on my plush. Like, it's one of my favorite things to do. It's why Coco Camille is winking at everyone right now. Anyway, I like to ask people, like, what sort of expression they'd like what feel you want the plush to have, because sometimes people want like a sexy flutter bat, or like sometimes people want like a really angry, crazy wildfire or something. And each of those will have like affect the overall feeling of the plush by your time. Thank you.
How much water are we getting up here? It's
Hydration, it's important.
Yes. Drink well. 621. One of those rules is drinking water. That might be like 6, 2, 1, 2. Drink 2 liters of water a day.
Drink for a bottle of water for every plush on the table.
Yes.
yeah, pretty much. But yeah, on the subject of like a lot of those Chinese plushes, like a lot of them, like if anything, the only way it's affected like plush makers in the artist community is that they've been ripping off plush makers' designs.
Yeah.
So like the only one I've had stolen, they copied my Daring Do.
Yeah.
I know like the girl that they copied Big Mac off and things like that. So you know, some people, like, I find it funny. Some people not so much, but yeah.
I think like it depends as well, because they'll never be as good as the original plush. Like people, the problem with those ones is that for things like, it was only factory, right? Like it was something like one factory or something like that. Is that somebody has taken somebody else's art and they've been like, can you draw this exact same thing? It's like if you'd gone to like a different artist with cheaper pricing and like taken like a doodle that somebody else has done. It's like, can you do this for me? And it's like, well, no, I can't. And that being said, it's the exact same thing when people ask other plush artists whether or not they can do the exact same thing as someone else.
But sometimes it does happen. Like on the topic of my sexy flutterbat that I made a while ago, there has been like 5 flutterbats that have come up with like
the eyes.
Either the exact same expression
I think I
or like
recommended
very
those
close.
eyes to you.
What's that?
Like you were asking what expression, I was like, please do sexy. I'm begging you. Your butts are perfect for this.
So I guess carrying on, like we've kind of gone through a journey here from like, you know, cutting out the initial print to pricing it and selling it. Now that people own the plushie, what is the proper maintenance that you recommend to be taking care of them?
Avoid rough handling. Like, so I always recommend that when you're carrying, especially one of the mares, like always take it from the middle of the waist, because if you take it from the
treat
tail,
it like a toy.
Oh, I hate people that pick them up by the tails, and I just cringe. It's cringe.
Like there's a way to handle it, like especially because some of them are real, just they're basically showpieces, so you can't do too much with them.
Like, for example, my alicorns over there, like, they're not something you would cuddle with and carry around sort of thing. Like, they're just too fragile. Like, they've got armatures inside them, but they're really not made, like, as cuddly plushes. So when you're looking to buy a plush, have a look around and, like, what, like, the plush artist makes their plushes for. Like, mine are mostly for display. Like, I wouldn't recommend that you, like, throw these around and, like, pull at them or handle them, like, super often. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I reckon when people buy something, they can do what they want with it. But if you want to take care of it, I treat mine like glass. I don't want mine to get damaged at all before they get to the person. And like people will come into my sewing room at home and be like, "Can I touch it?" And I'm like, "No," because I don't want them to be wrecked or anything before they go home. Or I get very protective of mine.
Also, be careful if you've got a pale OC, like they will get dirty. Minky, while beautiful, attracts dirt like nothing on earth, and I don't know why, but. Yeah, so avoid that, because I know that I've had, when I was making, because I have a beatnik rarity for sale in my room, plug, in the thing, but every time I was working with her, because I was working with black as well, and there's still some black fluff bits on her, because like Minky adheres to each other for some reason, so you will find that, especially on white, marks will show up. Though there is solutions to that, spot cleaning, for example, warm water and like just a small... like just dabbing. Do not
But
wipe.
try not to use detergent and things like
Yeah,
that.
don't
because that Minky is funny because if like it flows in a certain direction and if you rub it with soap it can ruin like the direction of the fur and you'll never get it back to how it was.
Yeah.
So like really gently just wipe with like just water, like not wet,
Yeah,
but just
like
a damp cloth. Just wipe it down, wipe all the dust off it.
Yeah.
And don't get it dirty in the first place is a good.
And if you're wanting to like give it a fluff, pet brushes.
Really?
Yeah, no, because I use it to pick my seams. So
I used to use a lint brush, but it doesn't really work so well on this Minky, so I stopped using it.
Do try, it's really good.
Okay.
Tips at the same time. But like the other thing is there's this thing called Grandma's Secret Spot Remover. Okay. It's made in the US. I know it sounds really lame. You can buy it at Spotlight and stuff. And I found in my experience that has worked on occasion. Like if I've made it like a little bit of a boo-boo on Freckles' tail or something, that ends up helping quite a bit. But again, it's still dab. Do not wipe. You'll spread the stain. It's exactly like a shirt. Be careful, please.
I think at this point we might turn over to the audience if there are any questions down in there. Feel free to speak up. Yes?
That's the other thing. Minky will kill your scissors.
I reckon it's worth investing in a decent pair of scissors. Even like, because if you buy ones just from Spotlight or something, just the cheap ones, they will just bend the Minky. They won't even cut it. It's really terrible.
I would go the other way. Like I use a rotary cutter, which you can buy replacement blades for. So you're not actually like using the same blade over and over again, which is really fantastic to use like just on flat pieces. I personally go and buy more cheaper scissors and I just go through a lot of them. So I just replace them a lot so that they stay sharp because I bought a pair of like $250 scissors. They went blunt and there's not a lot of ways to get them back to like perfect condition.
I haven't gone that expensive. I've got $20 pair of scissors and a $40 pair of scissors. And my $40 pair of scissors are really nice, but they're like really heavy German ones, and you can't use them for long periods of time because your arms just hurt.
The rotary cutter is really nice. Like it just saves a lot on your wrist. So if you have like a massive piece of fabric to cut, you're not snip, snip, snip. It's just glide. But they're also a bit dangerous, so you have to be careful.
It also cuts like butter. The other thing, I use a combination of both. So I do rotary cutting for the big pieces, and then I will use scissors to kind of like. I have like 7 pairs of scissors. It's bad. I have like the same amount of hairbrushes because I can never find them. But like I use the scissors when I'm doing fine detailing. Like so, if I've got like a dart or something, dart being like the little triangle thing that means that you kind of tuck in your fabric. Sorry, so I have no idea how to explain it. Yeah, like it's when you're making a ball. If you see beach balls, there's like those little lines on them. That's technically a dart. Sometimes. Sorry, I'm not even going to get into it. That's technical. But I use those, and then when it comes to finishing off a plush, so you're like cutting off all the excess fabric around the way, there's like multiple options, but I actually use pinking shears, which are kind of like, they have like a zigzaggy edge, and I especially do that around my curves because what that does is that it helps round out that curve really nicely, so you have like a really soft round thing instead of like weird lumpy, I don't know what's going on sort of thing.
All right, any other questions out there? All right. No, yep, they're in the back.
Are there any other materials that you would use for making plushies?
Some people use fleece, and I've seen people try to use felt. You can pretty much use anything, but all materials behave differently. So if you want something that feels completely different, you can use it, but it might stretch differently, or in the pattern.
So your pattern's going to be totally different on different fabrics.
It also depends what kind of plush you're making. So I do human plushies as well, and I'll use deer suede for the skin. It's not actually deer suede. It's like, I don't know, it's kind of like a felt, but better. But I use that on skin because it comes in a variety of like skin tones, which is why I use it. But then I'll use minky and stuff for the hair because it doesn't pill, which means you can cut it without it dying. It's amazing.
All right. Just sort of a last general question for the three of you. Who is your favorite? What has been your favorite plushie to make? What has been your least favorite main character to make, and why? Going down the list.
Probably I'll do two for my favourite. Pinkie Pie is probably my favourite just as a general mare to make. She looks really cute as a plush. I also love making Luna because she just looks gorgeous. And then probably my least favourite. Rarity is usually a pain, but I love her, so she's worth it.
She's so pretty.
Yeah.
That main.
For me, my favourites, I really liked my, there's none in the room, but my Coco Pomel plushies. They were really gorgeous, and this one here, I didn't want to part with her, but I'm parting with her. As for my least favourite, my Sunset Shimmers, if you've seen them around, that was that really tested my patience,
bacon main,
and sanity. But of the main six, I really avoid Rainbow Dash.
Oh yeah. I am sorry. Rainbow Dash is just too many colors and too many stripes. And it's worse if you're doing Daring Do because it's all that but grey, so you're never sure what colour's next.
I made like a colour coding system.
Yeah, you
so
have
I
to
put a rainbow, and then I was like, okay, this grey is that colour and that colour.
And you have to make sure you're like double checking all the time. But my least favourite to plush is Rainbow Dash, especially at chibi size, because these are my chibis. Now imagine like attempting to sew 7 colors, six colors on like something that small. And I've made 2 so far. So, like I think they're both living with people in Sydney, I think. You know them?
No, I'm just.
Oh, okay, cool.
I'm getting into it.
Okay, cool.
Sydney's awesome. Yeah.
Sydney. Never been. But like at that size, Rainbow Dash is probably my least favorite. I'm sure if I worked bigger, it might be easier, but like that has scarred me for life. My favorite, I really like making OCs. I really like making OCs.
Well, real quick then, what type of OC, if you had to pick one?
Just interesting ones. Like, yeah, I'm looking at you still. I really enjoyed making, because I did the VIP plushies. I really enjoyed making the Green Lantern graphite sketch, which was evil, but amazing, but evil. But because she had a full flight suit. But what I did, and I think what was the part that I liked the most about it, was that after I finished making the flight suit, I remembered to put in like piercings, and like I actually bought like an official Green Lantern ring, and then I like soaked it in hot water and molded it around the hoof, because it was like, my chibis are small enough that you can use like a human ring for it, which is good.
All right, well, thank you all very much for coming out here. Thank you all for listening. Once again, going down from the back, Snuggle Factory, Snuggle Factory, Nazegoreng. Thank you all very much for coming out here and discussing plushies. Check them out over at the art vendors and purchase one of these if they're for sale. Thank you very much.
This one's in the auction. Come
These
by it.
2 are in the auction. Also, magnetic heart.
Magnetic boulder. Oh yeah.
Yeah, magnets. Oh yeah, other thing. Magnets are amazing. They're so much fun to work with.
They're actually such a pain to work with, actually. I'd sew them.